And actually, it affects everyone. Everyone, when I say I'm a data protection officer, I think everyone sort of understands it. It can be difficult when you're trying to apply rules to a technology where it's not familiar to many people, and you're trying to figure out, how do we apply this?
But that's the friction, isn't it? What the marketers want versus the privacy officers, and it's finding that balance. Yeah.
Developers are so hard to keep on top of, but also not to just write once, but to keep updating. Learn as you go, and it's great. If you're happy to learn and ready to grow, you're going to achieve. New technology is definitely a challenging area when it comes to advising in data protection.
Welcome to the Spotlight on Women in GRC, a podcast series created to continue the conversations sparked by the Women in GRC Awards 2026 and carry those insights beyond the event. Backed by key sponsor, CoreStream GRC, the series shines a light on the women shaping governance, risk and compliance, exploring their backgrounds, experiences and perspectives on what's changing across the industry. I'm your host, Lucy Montague, and today I'm joined by Lorraine. Hello, Lorraine.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, and thank you for having me.
Good. I'm glad you're here. You're our very first DPO on the podcast, which is very exciting. Could you just introduce yourself to our audience and give us an understanding of your career and background?
Yeah. So as you said, I'm DPO, so Data Protection Officer, and I have been a Data Protection Officer for probably about 2 years now, but at my current organization, just under a year. And I have been in data protection for probably about 9 years, just under 10 years now. And I have been enjoying it and enjoying watching data protection grow and change.
It's so interesting, Lorraine, because I was looking at your LinkedIn profile this morning, and obviously one of your first companies, you were there when GDPR came into force and you were sort of spearheading that initiative. Could you give us some detail into what you had to do and what the challenges you overcame?
So in my first organization where I started off in data protection, actually, I had no background, I should say, in data protection. I was actually just completing my bar exams. I had just been called to the bar, and I was sort of deciding, where do I want my career path to go? At that point, I probably thought I would end up in the criminal law. So I thought I would be working at the criminal bar. But my organisation, the Royal College of Radiologists, were quite keen that I stay on and deal with data protection, because GDPR was going to be a big thing in the next year or so. And so to prepare myself, they kindly, I guess, paid for me to go on to some training courses, get me up to scratch with data protection and the GDPR, which I loved. I really enjoyed. And when I came back to the organisation, I essentially just went running with it. I helped them design their asset register. I helped them design their policies. I helped them design their training and deliver that training to staff. I was their point of contact there. I was essentially just helping us get used to what we thought GDPR was going to be expecting of the business. So just being really secure, shredding things, removing. I mean, back then we had so much paperwork. So, shredding things when we didn't need it, making sure we were locking computers when we left them. So it was really getting us into, I guess, the flow of things, but it was really the starting of it. So just teaching people things that we weren't used to doing. And it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, so the training aspect, because GDPR, I feel like, really kind of made everyone truly outside of GRC very much aware of privacy, like really for the first time, and become very mindful and conscious of it. When you were doing the training and you were educating the team, what were you using to help get that communication across effectively?
So it didn't tell, a lot of planning, because you had to understand what the rules were going to be, what was it going to mean for the business. So it was understanding that first. And then also, I would say, almost doing a sort of gap analysis, looking at what the business was doing, what they weren't doing, what needed to be changed, where people needed help. And I worked then with a group of others from the business, so people from different areas in the business, to come up with ideas and to understand what should go into the training. And then it was to design the training. So then we didn't use technology that we use now, where we have e-learning. then the training was delivered in person. So the way that I delivered the training was in an auditorium in front of 100 or so staff members, telling them this is what the rules are, this is how things are going to change, and then allowing them to put their hands up and ask questions. So it's very different to what I'm used to now, where training is just e-learning and it goes out and staff do it essentially alone, and potentially can ask questions later on if they approach the DPO or the data protection team. But back then it was all in person, in front of everyone, and getting the questions immediately. And it was great because you could see people's worries and deal with them then and there, and teach people in person and immediately. And I think it was actually quite, at the time, it was probably a nerve-wracking experience, but it was also, it was a great way to do it as well, I would say.
Yeah, that's really diving in at the deep end at the start of your career to be like, okay, I'm presenting in front of hundreds of people and teaching them something brand new. That's really impressive.
Yeah, it was definitely different. And I think there is room for that still in organizations, but I guess it's now a line in diaries, whereas when I was
Yeah.
starting out and back then, it was just everybody was really nervous. And so we just agreed that this is how we're going to do it. The senior leaders had decided that we just want everyone to do it at the same time. And there wasn't really e-learning products that dealt with data privacy, and we didn't really have the capacity to build it ourselves. And so that's how we did it. And I think it worked. And I think actually I look back on it as I'm talking out loud, it would be nice to actually offer that sort of
Yeah.
training to people now.
Yeah. Yeah. Human connection and communication, it's always the best.
Yeah.
So GDPR obviously hooked you into the world of privacy and GRC. What's kept you in the privacy space and not had you explore into maybe more risk or wider compliance?
I really enjoy data protection just because I think I can sort of resonate with it. I understand how I want my data to be protected, as well as how the law requires us to protect people's data. And I have just really enjoyed that I guess that balance, or just that link, and being able to provide advice on something, and to be able to sort of empathize or understand how it would feel for my data to be used in a particular way. And so that's what has kept me in, just because of the connection, and the connection to the people side of it, I guess. Also, I have just really enjoyed, as the laws have changed, as the careers have evolved, you're seeing more data protection professionals take on AI. I've enjoyed that. There's other parts of the law where the data actors brought in different types of work, or you could be working internationally. And when I started out in my career, I was very much, we were doing EU law back then, and that was great. And I just love that international aspect of it. And so that's what's kept me in, is being able to touch on different data protection laws and do different I guess advice work. And actually it affects everyone. Everyone, when I say I'm a data protection officer, I think everyone sort of understands it, because everyone just says, oh, you did the GDPR stuff. And I love that everyone knows what my role is. And so they
Yeah.
understand what it is. I think if I did a bit more of a broader risk, if it was a financial risk or other stuff, it becomes very niche and not everyone can understand that. And I think that's what I love about data protection.
Yeah, I really like the point around like thinking as a consumer rather
Yeah.
than just, as you say, risk and compliance can be quite corporate and could be mainly for like business needs. Whereas everyone, every individual cares about their data privacy and how it could impact them. That's a really interesting point that we can use to help recruit the next generation of privacy officers. I love that. You've also, so you've worked across many different organisations in regards to size and sector, so like retail, telecommunications, sport, technology. How has it, how different is it across those different sectors and across those different sizes, and where are the commonalities across them as well?
Well, the data protection law, I think, applies the same across all. You still need a record of processing activity. You all still need a privacy notice and policy. You all still need cookie policies. And so there's so many of it that just applies the same, and that is great. I think where it changes is where depends on the product. So when I worked in telecom, we had different products and different rules, with regards to how we dealt with broadband, for example, or how we dealt with the insurance packages that we offered there. And but then when I am in sort of when I did AdTech, it was really much this technology, and that was really interesting because it was about how are you tracking people, and the rules are different. You have PECA and you have to follow different areas of the law, and then in sporting you have to deal with probably a bit more of the fans, and just it's just more people work. And so it is there's a lot of things that are similar because it is all from the same laws and they
Mm-hmm.
all cross over, but you apply different parts of it and you apply it differently depending on what you're dealing with.
And with the sort of bigger organisations where you were covering 14 markets and all the different localised needs, and then you've got the global outreach as well, what do you prefer? Do you prefer looking after lots of different markets, or do you prefer it when it's maybe slightly more manageable, maybe one, two, or three?
So that's quite interesting because I guess with the larger markets, so although I support those larger markets when I was in that position, they also had protection professionals in those markets who were dealing with the local law. So you had that support of somebody already there that understood the local law, and that was great. Whereas when I was at the AdTech, I was the one that had to deal with the local law. And so it's very different. So a bigger organization will have local people who can support you, and that's great. You work together, you collaborate, and that's probably a bit easier. Whereas when you're in a smaller company, but with a global outreach, and you are the one doing with all the local laws, that is definitely more difficult. So I could probably say there is I guess pros and cons to both, because I learned a lot in a smaller company dealing with all those local laws myself. And that is great because I had to learn quickly and fast and train people and teach people. And that was wonderful. But whereas when you're in a bigger organization, you've also got a lot of support. And so you can learn, but you don't need to learn local law. So you don't learn in the same way. So I would say there's pros and cons, and it just depends on your capacity to learn, I guess. And I doubt I could have done 17 markets in detail. Although I feel like in my previous organization, when I did US law, I felt that you had to learn the each state as they were I guess releasing their new rules. And that was really difficult. So I I enjoyed it, but I would say it was difficult. And I
Yeah.
probably do also enjoy the global aspect. I really do enjoy global work, but I would prefer the support as well.
Yeah, and this is where you just need some technology to support you if you are in that capacity, because it is
Yeah,
just so much for one person.
I
Yeah.
agree.
So moving into a more leadership focused question here. Women make up roughly 50% of entry level roles in GRC, yet only 17% of chief risk officers and 14% of chief compliance officers are women. Why do you think that gap exists?
It is a difficult one because you can read sort of news outlets or just, I guess, on social media, and you would see that many people say that women are not as bold enough to apply for some of these senior roles unless they meet a certain percentage, and it's usually a higher percentage, they say, than their male counterparts. And so I think that could potentially be part of it. I know I definitely want to meet a lot of the job description before I apply for it, but just because I think that gives me more confidence, and more confidence that I could do the role well. And so if there are women also thinking in this rate, and I can see why we're not going to reach those levels, because we're not just applying for these roles and then learning and growing in the role as perhaps the male counterparts are. And there may just also be that females may have more caring needs, so they might need to care for another adult or child or whatever it may be, which might restrict their ability to have a senior role just because they won't have the capacity or the time to offer their skills, and then also balance it alongside their family responsibilities or caring responsibilities. So I think there may be this aspect of it which is a bit of a shame. So it would be amazing to see if more companies would offer more flexibility or job shares which would enable women to be in those more senior positions, or encourage. I mean, I've seen job ads that say if you haven't met all of the requirements or expectations, still apply. I think maybe people could do that to encourage people who might be nervous like me or female like me to apply for it and see if they still make the match.
And you've obviously progressed into the data protection officer role, which is obviously more senior. What enabled you to like take that leap and kind of apply, or did someone come to you? How did that work?
I felt that I just built the confidence. So in my role in the telecom, they were very encouraging about going out to do public speaking and just really pushing me to do more than I naturally would do, I should say. And so I was building training and then assisting with what did we call them? I forgot, sort of clinics online, to training our global teams or training their global teams by doing clinics and just really pushing myself, I would say. And so as I built that confidence, I realized that I feel confident now to take on a DPO role, a data protection officer role, and I should just go for it and see what it's like. And I was also seeing my colleagues doing the same. I was seeing my colleagues in similar positions move into DPO roles, and I could see that this telecom was really producing, I guess, great qualities and great experience in us that was enabling my colleagues to do that. So why not do it myself? And so I took the leap. I then put myself forward for a role, which was a AdTech, and that was great. And I got the role and I was in it, and I realized you learn as you go, and it's great. If you're happy to learn and ready to grow, you're going to achieve.
That's great advice there. So thinking about where can you challenge yourself in kind of little ways which can lead to even bigger change. So the speaking is really funny because obviously I remember seeing you speak at hashtag Risk London when you were doing a privacy talk, and I just thought, God, she really knows her stuff. She's really, really great. And it's incredible to think that maybe you were thinking, I'm out of my comfort zone here, because you didn't seem it at all. Yeah.
I'm glad you think that. And also, the one good thing about public speaking is that you have to study more. So you have to make sure you're up to scratch and
Yeah.
you know things. And so it pushes you to learn because you study more. And it was quite funny because when I was doing this public speaking and talking to my chief DPO at the time, he had said, yeah, do the public speaking because you're only going to learn more as you study more to be better, to speak to people and educate people.
Love that. There's lots of teaching that's coming out of your role, Lorraine. You can really tell that you're having to share the knowledge with others. It's lovely.
Thanks.
um, so then let's say there is a recent graduate who's sitting in the audience of one of your talks. Why should they consider a career in privacy? What would you tell them?
I would say some of the things I've already been saying. It is a role that I think allows you to resonate with the consumer. It allows you to do a role where it really does affect you as well. So as you learn to protect people's data, to advise the business on how to use data, you are also learning how your data should be protected and how it should be kept safe. So it's really great. You learn about the way your data is processed as well as teaching others in the business to do it correctly or lawfully. And so I would say go for it. It is a great job in which you realize it affects your day to day. So I think for me, it's always been easy to work in a role where I, for example, used a product or I think it had some sort of impact on my life. And so I think if they would enjoy that, then I would say go into data protection because you're not only going to make an impact in the company and the things that they do, but it's also feels like it has an impact in your life. So rather than being a sort of person who worries about all the cookies and accepting or declining or whatever you want to do, you understand how it works. And so you won't panic anymore. You can understand how to deal with it. Um, and you just get to learn a bit more about your data rights, which is great. And I can't see why that's a terrible thing. I think it's a great thing. And so I would say if that is something of interest, go for it. It's also a great career for anyone who perhaps sort of wanted a legal career, but doesn't necessarily want to go down your standard route of just commercial, criminal, or some of the other aspects. It allows you to have that balance where you can either have a bit of law and a bit of operation, or you can become a privacy counsel if that's what you prefer. But there's so many routes in data protection that you can go down. And if you don't quite like that and you want to sort of go a bit further into security, you can also do that. So I think there's so many opportunities in it, which I didn't know about when I was in law school. And so I'm really happy I just sort of fell into it. And then I've learned so much. And so I would definitely encourage students or anyone sort of thinking about it to investigate and look into where they might fit into it or what role would sort of best suit them.
So the theme that stands out there is empowerment of your privacy choices, but also empowerment to do other things if you want to through that privacy path.
Yes, I agree with that. Yes, a great summary.
um, do you think women bring a different perspective to privacy leadership? If so, how?
I think so. And I think just having a diverse group generally will always bring a different perspective. And that's why I think women should always be in the space, because women make up I mean, I can't say the percentage, but we make up the part of this world. And so why just have one sort of person? Have
Yeah.
everyone. And I think diversity is important so that all the different people who make up our world are also speaking about it and providing an opinion. And so that's why I think it's important to have women in a position, and where possible, pushing that diversity even more so that we are thinking about all and considering all and allowing all of these good opinions to be shared, and also to have good debate.
Yeah.
Not all opinions going to be great, but if you have different people in the room, you're going to have a good debate because everyone's going to bring that different sort of idea or argument which needs to be discussed.
Yeah, and it aligns with the fact that you're covering all consumers, and consumers make up a variety of different segments and diversities, and so our leadership and teams need to also reflect that.
Yes, exactly. I completely
Yeah.
agree with that.
Looking back over the last few years of your career, which privacy and compliance project stands out as particularly challenging or interesting, and why?
Oh, I probably could say a few. I mean, I'll give brief sort of examples. I'd always say doing the record of processing activity, so Europa, is always challenging. I think at some point, you most organizations, well, no, I can't say most, organizations may find themselves sort of doing so much that the roper falls behind. And if you don't, and you're brilliant at keeping on top of your roper, that's amazing, because the ropers are so hard to keep on top of, but also not to just write once, but to keep updating. So I would always say the roper is challenging. I would also say there are, I guess, is I would say is when I've worked in organizations where the technology is new, that's always been challenging, simply because it's a technology that I can't necessarily go on to, for example, the ICO website and figure out whether they know how to apply the law to it, because it's new and they don't understand it. So it can be difficult when you're trying to apply rules to a technology where it's not familiar to many people, and you're trying to figure out how do we apply this. So I find that more in AdTech, that they use technology that I don't think it's understandable to many, and a very few will be specialists in it. And you need to figure out how does the rules apply to this to make sure it's compliant, just because it's performing in a way where I can't get transparency in there at the right point, or who owns it, who does this. It's just, it becomes a bit confusing. So I would say new technology is definitely a challenging area when it comes to advising in data protection.
Yeah, it's so funny as the marketer who gets lots of ad tech sold to me, and sometimes I'm like, God, that sounds great from a marketing perspective, but from a privacy perspective, how do we work around that? But that's the friction, isn't it? What the marketers want
Yes.
versus the privacy officers, and it's finding that balance. Yeah,
Yeah.
and obviously obeying the law first and foremost. Um, Looking ahead, what do you think will define the next era of privacy, and how should leaders and teams prepare for it?
So I know most people will say AI, and that is true. I think AI is going to change a lot, but I think we're still going to figure that out, I think. But something that's probably immediate for us in the UK, I would say, is how is the ICO going to look like? Because we know there are changes happening there. And so, I mean, I don't know how we can prepare for it. We can only keep applying the rules as they are, but it'll be interesting to see if the way that the ICO may change may mean that they may police things a bit differently, or a little bit more stricter, or be a bit more proactive. And that would be really interesting to see. So the only way I guess you can prepare for that is to be really good at your compliance and really on top of your ropers and your policies, and just keeping things up to date and being on top of your training, and then just wait and see what happens.
Following the best practices. Yeah.
Yes.
So we move into our final questions here around influence. So, how has your career shaped who you are outside of work?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, as I said, I've always loved the idea of being a consumer and being someone who advises on the things that affect the consumer. And so outside of work, I would say I'm more alert to these things, but also I would also say outside of it, because I see the way that data protection, I guess compliance can be difficult. I really do enjoy now giving time back to people. So I quite enjoy offering time to charities to sort of help them with their privacy, whether it be a local charity and advising on their privacy notice, helping them draft their privacy notice. And so I think just understanding the complexities of data protection has made me, I guess, want to help more.
Oh, that's so nice. Are there any charities that you can share with us, or?
And so I have helped a local charity called the Wolfenstow Toy Library, which is a wonderful charity that allows families to rent toys rather than buy them because you can end up with too much, but it means you can rent them. And the rental fees are so cheap of about £1 or so a week. And it just allows you to rent. I've rented from them for parties where you can rent your soft play from them. And actually it's a fraction of the price where it might be about 50 quid rather than a few hundred, and you can have it for the whole weekend rather than a few hours. And so it's such a great initiative. So if anyone wants to support them, please do. And yeah, it's just little things like that in the local area. I'm also a governor at schools, where schools sometimes, they have so much going on with their Ofsted that, they might struggle with certain things with regards to their data protection. And so it's nice to be able to support with the knowledge I have already and giving that for free and just
Yeah.
allowing it to support the local community. I would love to even do more if I could maybe reach out to children in schools and be able to talk to them through schools to be able to explain how to look after their data and to be more mindful of the data that they put out there if they don't want people processing it. So I think it's things like that that I do and would love to do more of.
That's so interesting because I've never even considered, obviously, the under 16 social media ban that's coming into force. But up until that point, kids, yeah, they don't have that same level of awareness as adults and are just
Yeah.
probably accepting all sorts. God, that's
Yeah.
really interesting. Last question here. Are there any books, podcasts, or people who have had a meaningful impact on your career that you'd like to recommend to others?
Oh, I think there's been a lot of people who've had an impact in my on my career. And I would say they are the sort of DPOs I've reported to and who I've been able to learn from. So I would say, like, I'm really grateful to people like Steve Wright, who have been really great to me. Miko Nevo, who was my DPO at Vodafone. Again, these are all people who've taught me a lot. I've learned from Henry Kajala, so who again from Vodafone, we worked with each other for a short time. Even Terry Yvette in Admiral now have been someone who has really been encouraging me and supporting me and have helped me learn in my career. So those are people who you can watch out for. I mean, they do talk at events, and so you can hear them speak and learn from them that way. In terms of podcasts, there's so many out there. I would say listen to this one.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Also, Trustworks have one where they do little short bursts, so about 10 minutes or so long. And I think that's a great thing to learn. And I'm hoping I can also collaborate with them. And that's great as well. So I would say those things. And there's obviously more. I'm just not sort of, I guess, on top of it all. And if there are things that I think people just want to do to keep in the know, of course, sign up to your newsletters with law firms. There are great ones. I love Osborne Clark for their stuff. I'm probably saying too many names I probably shouldn't be saying, but I love the stuff that they provide. And there's lots of other law firms, and I think law firms are really great at offering these online learnings, but also sometimes they have in-person, like all-day events. So people should be on top of those things. It's a great way to learn, but ask questions from those law firms at the time, and also to network. I think networking is so important to have a network of data professional friends that you can ask questions to, and especially if you work alone, it's great to make contacts from which you can message and share knowledge.
So I'd highly recommend everyone go and follow and connect with Lorraine on LinkedIn. and check out those names that she just suggested. That's a very great comprehensive list, and I will definitely be going ahead and following them. Thank you so much, Lorraine, for this discussion. I feel like I have a much greater understanding of privacy, so thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
And to all those listening, we will see you next week with another episode of the Spotlight on Women in GRC podcast. Until then, thank you so much.